Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SoccerBeat podcast. We're talking Kaizer Chiefs and reviewing the match tonight, a 1-1 draw at home against AmaZulu. I've got Coach Farouk Khan and Tsepo Masilela with me. Before we crack on, guys, hit that subscribe and like button. Let's get the visibility up and the subscriber numbers up a little bit as well. Okay, gents, let's start with you, Coach. A draw, and we did think that, Chiefs might slip up tonight. But what's your sentiment of the result, having seen just how the game played out? Chiefs had a penalty and they had a goal. Basically, the ball was a few centimeters from crossing the line from Pule Mmodi when Khanyisa Mayo tried to, steal the goal. I mean, what do you make of that incident and just the general feeling around the game now that it's over and it was a draw?
Well, Grant, I think the Chiefs completely dominated the first half. They had all the lion's share of possession. They had 11 shots on goal, 7 on target, whereas AmaZulu just had 1, which they scored. And once again, this was a perfect opponent for Kaizer Chiefs tonight, simply because they sat back. They showed Kaizer Chiefs a lot of respect, simply because Chiefs had so much pace going for them down the flanks. When you defend with 3 in the back and you leave the sides open, and Chiefs have the likes of Solomon's on the one side, Mmodi on the other side, Lilepo can also get into those channels. They can cause you problems, which Chiefs did. My biggest disappointment was that with all of that possession, with all of those opportunities, with the fact that AmaZulu were unable to play out of the back, Kaizer Chiefs just managed to score a single goal. Even though they had a penalty, they had a couple of one-on-ones. For me, that doesn't go down too well, because I'm of the opinion against a better opponent, as we've seen in the past, they could come unstuck. So Mayo, complete blooper. He had no business touching that ball. The ball is on its way over the line. What business has he got in getting it? Does he want to get onto the score sheet? He scored a goal on his debut. He should relax a little bit, and just let other guys also get the limelight a little bit. I'm a bit disappointed in a player of his stature, an experienced campaigner. What business did he have, having that extra touch just to claim the goal and get on the score sheet? I think it cost him dearly. I don't think AmaZulu would have come back.
Yeah, and Tsepo, Khanyisa Mayo is a confidence player. He's often scored in hot streaks and he's had droughts. So we just not destroy him too much. But I'm very interested to know what you think of that moment, because if Chiefs took the lead at that point, they would have had something to hold on to. They would have had a reward for that first half performance that they deserved. And it would have made AmaZulu come out, which would have given them some more space to play as well. So what did you make of, let's say, the Mayo incident? And overall, do you feel like this is really 2 points dropped?
Grant, is definitely 2 points drop. You're playing at home and, you're not in a good space like in the league. So they needed the 3 points in today's game, And that Mayo incident, man, that was so childish. I don't know how to explain it, I'm sure when he looks at it, when he sees it maybe on his phone, like, nowadays you have the technology and all those things on your phone. Like when he sees, he will be very disappointed. He let his team down, and it's one thing to miss a penalty, but that incident, it was very, very, very poor from a guy that you expect. In those moments, he's gonna be relaxed, calm, collect the ball from the net. Let's go, guys, push the guys. But yeah, man, I guess it happens in football. But overall, the first half they were dominant, as the coach said. But what I picked up today, with that system, more like a 3, holding back, they had the right personnel in the position. Last time they tried playing with it with Ashley Dupree, slightly inside, more as a 10. It didn't work, But today I felt like, with Solomons and Mmodi, and Shabalala and Lilepo, they pushed the AmaZulu team backwards. They were sitting on top of their box. They couldn't breathe, AmaZulu. I would say well done to the coaches, with getting the personnel right to suit the system.
I think you nailed it there. We saw the same shape against Maruma Gallants, but this time they had Mmodi instead of Paseka Marco. They had a lot more threat down that left. Mmodi did play that role in the Nedbank Cup run last year. They started dropping him into the left back role when they're defending. When they attack, they've got just 3 backs in that sort of rest defense. And it worked nicely. Solomons gave a lot more pace and thrust than Frostler. He even he sort of underlapped a bit sometimes when Lilepo was wide. He went on the outside when Lilepo came inside. And as you said, Chiefs played really well in that first half. Coach, this seems to be something that these coaches like. They may be leaning a bit on the plan that got them the Nedbank Cup last year. Do you agree with Tsepo? He got players in the right positions that suited them better, especially players who are more comfortable between the lines. But also he started Mshini, and I know he maybe hasn't won you over in some of his performances this season. And I know Tsepo loves Tabotsele, but Mshini, he tries to pass forward, he tries to break lines and play the slide rule passes. Sometimes Tele, he's good at keeping the ball, but maybe doesn't do enough to actually hurt opponents. Do you see it the same way? Do you think he took his chance, and you think that the personnel were right, like Tsepo said?
Well, I think for this particular opponent, I think they did their homework. They realized that AmaZulu have a slow defense. They also realized that AmaZulu has the tendency to give away possession on transition, which we've seen tonight, not on one occasion, but on several occasions. So they used the speed factor to great effect. I think individually, Mmodi had a very good game. He gave them a lot of problem down the flanks. I think Novo, to me, was a little bit unlucky, could have scored, was just a bit unfortunate. So overall, I think all the attackers, including Lilepo, although he missed a penalty, he gave them quite a few headaches, and it was just that sometimes, what I see as a problem is the fact that that final pass, that final shot seems to be giving, Chiefs the nightmares that we've seen. Sometimes it's just a case of picking your spot, side-footing it into goal. Johnson was outstanding. I mean, if you look at the score, it's not a clear indication of how the game could have gone. I mean, this keeper was the man of the match for me. He made some phenomenal saves. So be that as it may, I don't think, there should be panic. But you can't keep on saying this. You want to make sure at home you get all 3 points. I don't dispute the fact that even a 2-1 victory would have been a great result, taking into account the keeper's performance, taking into account that at times you're just a little bit unlucky. But once again, Chiefs dropped the baton when they shouldn't have. And I think Mayo will look back at this particular one and look himself in the mirror. Also, Lilepo's penalty wasn't the best of penalties. The keeper, it was very close to him. I mean, surely leadership should prevail. I think in the past we saw Miguel taking penalties. Since he's missed, he seems to be getting a bit of cold feet. Maybe he should step up again, because we know at one stage he was the go-to man.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good, a good point to pick up on. Chiefs have missed penalties this season from Sereno and Lilepo. Very generous penalties, yes, but if they stuck them away, they would have been much higher up the table potentially. And then, as Coach mentioned, Miguel missed those 2 penalties in pre-season. He seems to have lost his confidence or bottle on the spot kicks. So that's something Chiefs have to sort out. I mean, who would be your number one penalty taker, Tsepo? And then secondly, I think we all agree the first half was really good. Chiefs had a lot of shots. Johnson was outstanding. And I think in the first half, 14 shots, 6 on targets, nearly 20 box touches. But the second half, Chiefs kind of ran out of ideas and steam a little bit. And the numbers are quite a bit less than that. It's like 9 shots in the second half. Not bad still, but maybe the subs maybe a bit late. What did you make of the sort of the turnaround after the break? And then obviously in the penalties, who are you putting your money on going forward?
Penalties, I would also, go back to Miguel, give him that responsibility again. And that's where you need leaders, from the change room and from the training ground. You have time to practice, and as a coach, you can see or feel, going into the game. You have a match day -1 where you fine tune everything. That's when it should be clear who's their first penalty taker, and I would go back to Miguel. And second up, it's sometimes it's like that in football, because you also have an opponent. They go into the break. They've got a coach, who's maybe figured out how are you guys playing. They try to counter that, and sometimes it can be difficult. And I don't think they were that bad also in the second of Kaizer Chiefs. It's just that I felt that they ran out of legs. And looking at Solomons, he was holding back a bit. It was not too high when they building up. That's what I picked up. And also, I would also want to see them when they go wide. They need to add more numbers. It needs to be clear who's going first pole, who's attacking, the cutbacks, last poll, if they can get that sorted out, they can be more of a threat and they can get more goals. Because you find at times that they play beautiful football. When it goes wide, they overplay. Then it's a back pass again. It goes to the middle. Then that's where you're inviting a transition. So when they go wide, it should be clear in the box who's attacking which area in the box to finish off the action. But second half, yeah, we can say, slightly different from the first half. And, you make changes, the game changes, and, it becomes a lot. And if you don't take those chances in the first half, it comes back to haunt you. Luckily, they got a point, and, sometimes there was that last action where it was a 4v2, AmaZulu on the transition, and I don't know, bad decision and was the offside. You see those moments, they can define the game, and you go home with 0 points.
Yeah, and coach, one of your go-to impact subs, Mfundubile Kaizer, is not available. Probably could have done with him tonight. He'd actually be quite nice in that inside right role in this formation. And once again, we saw Duba come on. He hasn't really impacted games from the subs bench. What did you make of the second half and the subs? It was past the 70th minute already when we saw De Silva. Serena only got about 15 minutes. Obviously, Lilepo went off. And as you say, yes, he might have put a few chances wide, but he was a kind of a constant threat. What did you make of the changes? And as you say, as Tsepo said, was it just the opponents adjusting, or did Chiefs kind of run out of ideas a bit?
I would have liked the subs to come in a bit earlier. With the remaining minutes that they came on, they couldn't really impact the game because now AmaZulu was sitting back, defending. And, it's difficult when you're coming in at that moment when the game is so tightly contested. So in fairness to them, they didn't do too much, but you can't really blame them because they came in at a time when AmaZulu were defending for their lives. But I think there's a couple of points that I want to mention. Firstly, I think we must compliment Atiswani the second half. They didn't sit as far back as they did. Eventually, Chiefs forced them back, but they looked to play a bit more on the front foot. They did get there a little bit naive at times. I think AmaZulu taken some of those chances where they lost possession in transition. And that's the other thing, Grant, I want to mention. When Kaizer Chiefs did win possession on transition, they didn't punish AmaZulu effectively because they had numbers up. And I just think one or two of those transitions should have been, converted into a goal. So this is food for thought for the coach. The coach has to work more on clinical finishing in the attacking third, as well as work on transition to become a bit more refined. And the service into the box should be such where you don't have that 6-footer with Mayo, in the box. They should look for cutbacks. They should look for driven shots in, a little bit more diagonality. Sometimes they go to the line. They're looking for cutbacks. Just the early ball in, because you can see Mayo is that type of striker that will get on the end of those balls if you give him that service. So these are just a couple of things that I think the technical team must try to do, leading up to the next game.
Yeah, okay, so let's go on to the next game. It's Stellies. At the moment, Chiefs on a run of 1 win in 5, and in the league, it's 3 games without a win now, 1 defeat, 2 draws. They need a response. They need to try and get through, obviously, into the next round, and there's a chance to build on the Nedbank Cup last year. Tsepo, would you go similar lineup? And besides a similar lineup, do you think the two co-coaches now found a good formula that they should stick with Solomons instead of Frosler? Even your man Tele maybe on the bench and Mshini starting. I mean, Tele looks like he might be even 4th choice central midfielder now because Ndlovu was also keeping him out when fit. Is that a bit of a concern on your side? What would you do for the Stellies game in terms of your personnel and your shape?
I would keep the same shape. It seems like they're starting to, understand it. But mind you, today I think it worked also because if you look at AmaZulu, they play with 3 at the back. So if you play with 3 at the back, you're leaving 1 sitting in front. So the space is on the side of the holding midfielder. So it's a challenge when they play a team that's sitting with 2, 6 and 8, but sitting. So it's going to be a challenge, but that's where coaching comes in. You can play the same system, but you can tweak it here and there depending on the formation of the opponent and how they position themselves. But I would keep the same system, and give it a go again. But for the two coaches, it's the pressure is mounting. They don't have time, and it's a cup game, and we can't say they new to they've been in the system for last season and preseason, and at some point also the pressure will be on them. The fans will be looking at them like, what's happening? Are we, moving forward or are we going backwards? And it's the pressure will start to mount for everyone at Kaizer Chiefs. So hopefully they'll get a result. It's a cup game and you can't afford to slip up. But I think I've got a feeling they'll see it through. They'll go to the next round.
And coach, if these two co-coaches are sort of having an audition, this is their last chance. Would you make any changes? Same shape for you? Do you want to see anyone come back into the lineup?
Well, I'll go for Lilepo and Silva up front. I'll sacrifice Mayo, maybe bring him off the bench. The reason I'll do that is because I obviously want more service into the box using Solomon's more, not just to run with the ball. I think the tendency Solomon has is when he gets the ball, he wants to run out at times. I think sometimes you must just look for an early delivery, especially if you look at the defenders out of position, you're a little bit disorganized at the back. Get it early balls and do the same with Mmodi on the left. Guys, we don't want you to run into their defense at all times. At times, mix it up a little bit. At times, run at them. At times, look for that early ball and ensure that the two guys up front. Go with two up front. You've got such a phenomenal attack. You've got such pace. If it's not Solomon's, you've got Mmodi. I mean, Cross as well. Put in some excellent passes coming from deeper positions. So I don't think there's a problem with the servers. I just think sometimes they tend to take too long to deliver that ball. So maybe go with two up front. And if need be, bring Mayo off the bench.
Okay, fair enough. Gents, we'll chat on Sunday after the 3 o'clock kickoff. We'll see if it goes to extra time. And thanks for joining me tonight. One maybe guy to mention for Sunday is Ashley Dupree. It's his former club. He often does well for Chiefs against Stellies. So it's maybe a little bit forgotten tonight, but it could be someone to bank on in like these cup games. He always seems to deliver an assist or goal off the bench. Thanks for joining me, Jen. Chat soon.